With an ever-increasing population and a corresponding increase in the demand for food and staples coupled with limited land, there has been an exponential rise in the use of chemical fertilizers by farmers to improve productivity of their farms. However, lack of knowledge and poor education on the utilization of chemical fertilizers has often resulted to misuse with consequences. Hello and thank you so much for joining us in today's edition of the program Planet Rise on Canal International. We shall be right back. First, let's take you to watch this report to make you understand more about chemical fertilizers and why most farmers tend to go for what they see as easier, even though with consequences. We shall be right back. Fertilizers are natural or artificial substances containing the chemical elements that improve growth and productiveness of plants. They enhance the natural fertility of the soil or replace the chemical elements taken from the soil by previous crops. Fertilizers contain plant nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. From tomatoes to vegetables, maize, and other food crops, there has been an exponential rise in the use of chemical fertilizers to grow these local staples in Cameroon. Farmers attempt to meet the demand of a growing market.
Chemical fertilizer is becoming a safety net for many farmers because of several reasons. Some of the reasons include the quick nutrients available through chemical fertilizer make it easier for farmers to easily pick that compared to organic fertilizer, which is relatively expensive if you want to buy. And if you want to create your own compost, it takes time, and sometimes the process is kind of difficult and it might be really frustrating. And also the limited availability of land for farming also make fallow period kind of really limited. And for those who want to leverage other agricultural technique such as crop rotation and other stuff, the skills are also very limited, so it makes chemical fertilizer be like the way to go for many farmers.
They may be fast acting and affordable, but the overuse of chemical fertilizers and the poor utilization knowledge on the part of farmers has potentials of harming the soil.
Most of the farmers that are using chemical fertilizer do not have the right education. You will agree with me that more than 90%, I would say, of farmers using chemical fertilizer cannot read nor write. So they want to go with a directive of the person selling it to them. Now, this brings into play a lot of consequences that may arise. And if there is misapplication, we've also seen cases where we have a lot of food poisoning. If you go to the market nowadays and you're not too careful on the type of vegetables you're buying, you are going to really notice. And we also are seeing that if you continuously use the same chemical fertilizer on a piece of land for a very long time, it may alter the nutrient patterns and a whole lot.
The use of excessive quantity of synthetic fertilizers are harmful not just to the soil, but for human health. They contaminate the surface water via runoffs with attendant consequences. High levels of nitrates and nitrates in chemical fertilizers may cause some diseases like hemoglobin disorders, Alzheimer's disease, and diabetes mellitus, to name this. High time, thus, for effective education on the application of chemical fertilizers. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us on this segment of your favorite program, Planet Rise. We are receiving an expert in crop protection. He's equally a researcher at the Institute of Agricultural Research, IRAD. He's equally the head of department of the St. Louis Agricultural Institute here in the nation's economic capital, Douala. He's none other than Mr. Tanyi Clovis Bisson. Hello, sir, and thank you for joining us on this segment of the program.
Thank you for receiving me.
Yes, and in today's edition of the program, we're talking about the impact of chemical fertilizers on the soil, on human health. But first of all, I just want to find out from you, there seems to be a surge in the application of chemical fertilizers by farmers in their farms over the last decade. What accounts for this rise in the use and dependence on chemical fertilizers?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Before I answer the question, permit me to let our viewers know what fertilizers are all about. So a fertilizer is any material which can be of the natural or the synthetic origin which has the potential to add at least one or more nutrients that are essential for crop growth. And for reasons why there is an increase in the application of synthetic fertilizers, that is chemical fertilizers, I want to start with the first point, which is an increase in human population without a corresponding increase in the arable land that is under cultivation. And because of this increase, there is bound to be a pressure on the agricultural land, and so the farmers are bound to cultivate the same area of land over and over, and this has exacerbated the nutrient loss, and so they are bound to go looking for alternative sources to increase their yield. Yes, and the next thing is that since the population is increasing, the mouths to be fed have also increased, and so there is need to increase productivity only towards increasing the productivity of the soil. We cannot increase productivity by extending the available land, because land is already a problem, it is limited. And so that is why the farmers see chemical fertilizers as a good alternative to enable them improve the productivity of the soil and meet up with the high demand of food due to the increase in population.
And that brings me to my next question. There are a lot of people who believe that farmers today use chemical fertilizers abusively with resulting consequences on the soil, on human health. My question is, what is the right or wrong use of chemical fertilizers?
Okay, yes, it is very correct that farmers today, especially in our own nation, which is a developing nation, make use of high abuse in the way that they apply these chemicals. And for that, the first thing is because these farmers are not too educated, and since they are not experts in the field.
So there's a problem of lack of information.
Yes, they don't master the technical itineraries of crop production. And since they lack this mastery of technical itineraries, so they are bound to apply fertilizers, either the wrong types of fertilizers. They are either applying the wrong type of fertilizer, or they are applying at the wrong time, or they are using the wrong application methods. Yes. So the first thing is there is lack of soil test, because fertilizers are just to supplement the nutrients that are available in the soil. But now these farmers don't know the nutrients that are available in the soil. They don't know the current status of the soil.
So are you saying that before fertilizers must be applied on the soil, there is need to test the soil?
Ideally, before we carry out any production, we are supposed to know the current status of the soil, and this can be known through a confirmatory soil test.
But how realistic is this, though? When you look at the farmers, most of them are low-income earners. How realistic is it for farmers to do testing of the soil?
That is where the problem is, and that is where the government have to step in. Because rather than giving chemical fertilizers to farmers year in, year out, of course, these farmers can buy these chemical fertilizers. We should rather assist the farmer and put forth soil testing programs, and these soil testing programs can go a long way to confirm the nutritional the nutrient content in all the production zones in the country. And this now will also help the fertilizer production industry to know that this is the type of fertilizer that these particular farmers need for these particular purposes, because this is the current nutritional status of the soil.
Of the soil.
Yes, and that will go a long way to reduce the hazards. Of course, if you keep pumping chemical fertilizers, I call them poison, to farmers without adequately educating them on how to apply them, and then the technical itineraries, then it means that we are bound to live in poison, because living in an unhealthy environment means all of our life are at risk.
Yes, I'll be coming to the effects of chemical fertilizers on the soil, but the question I would like to find out from you right now is there's been this heated debate about food grown with fertilizer for long. I mean, there are a lot of people who believe that food grown with chemical fertilizer is not healthy. What's your take on this?
Okay. I also have the same opinion that food grown with chemical fertilizers are not healthy. First of all, when we grow food with chemical fertilizer, the plant is straight off, the growth of the plant is being straight off for nutritional quality of the crop. So the plant grows up rapidly, but the nutritional composition is low as compared to when grown with organic fertilizer.
Okay.
And so just this aspect of reducing the nutritional composition is a big problem. And then the next thing is that when we grow food with chemical fertilizers, we are bound to consume food that has residue.
Okay.
We are bound to consume food that have residue, and the most common...
And what's wrong with consuming food that has residue?
We have numerous health challenges. For instance, if we consume food that is grown with excess fertilizer, we are bound to have food that contains the residue of nitrate and nitrites. Okay. And when we have food in our system that has high concentration of nitrate and nitrites, we have several disorders. We may have the hemoglobin disorder, we may have cancers, and then the most known disorder for children is what we call the blue baby syndrome. Okay. So you have children, and if you look at their palms, they are looking bluish. Of course, the medical doctors can better explain that to us. And aside that, we may also have damages on the vascular and the respiratory system of our body. Okay. In addition, when we eat food that has more of nitrate and nitrite, there are possibilities that we may even have diabetes mellitus, which is affecting majority of the population today.
Now, are there long-term consequences on the soil when we use chemical fertilizers?
Of course.
If so, tell us about these long-term consequences.
Of course, there are long-term consequences when we use chemical fertilizers inappropriately. Okay. I am emphasizing on the term inappropriately because when we use it appropriately, we will not have significant long-term effects. But when we use these fertilizers inappropriately, there are numerous long-term effects in the environment and even on our health. Okay. So for the environment and specifically the soil, when we use chemical fertilizers, we tend to reduce the productivity of the fertility of the soil within a long run. Okay. Because the soil is an ecosystem.
It's such a paradox though. You're using a fertilizer to be able to boost the production, but in the long run, it's rather the reverse we see.
Yes. At the beginning, there are possibilities that we may have a reasonable yield obtained. But as we continue to use these fertilizers, the fertilizers, they are salts. And so they have devastating consequences on the soil biota, the living component of the soil. Okay. And so they can reduce mineralization if they affect the earthworms. You can imagine pouring salt on the worms. So they can affect the earthworms, and the earthworms are mineralizing nutrients naturally, okay, keeping the soil fertile. Aside that, they may also affect and even kill some other beneficial microorganisms that helps to naturally improve the fertility of the soil. Okay. And so when we apply fertilizers, we cannot have an expected response within a long term. Yeah. And now there are also those who say fertilizers can have very devastating consequences on underground water sources. Can you expatiate a little on this? Yes, I earlier on said fertilizers, when applied wrongly, they have devastating consequences. And one of the consequences is that they can be washed by runoff to our drinking sources.
Okay.
Yes, and when they are washed to our drinking sources, we get it in our system, it results to devastating effects. And aside that, they may be leached into the ground to the underground water sources. And when they leached to the underground water sources and we drink water that is contaminated with nitrate and nitrites, there are high possibilities that the children we produce may have what we refer to as the methamoglobinemia,
okay,
which is it causes damage of the respiratory system and also causes damage of the vascular system, and it can even result to what we refer to as cancer.
Okay.
Yes. So these chemicals, if appropriately used, can be leached and go to our underground water sources and result to devastating effects.
And now let's talk about natural fertilizers, or what is commonly known as organic fertilizers. There are a lot of people who have acclaimed natural fertilizers as being not just beneficial for human consumption, I mean in terms of food production, but it's equally beneficial for the soil in the long term. Are you an advocate of organic fertilizers?
First of all, I will say yes. I am an advocate for organic fertilizers due to their beneficial importance in the soil.
Okay.
When we use organic fertilizers appropriately, we are bound to improve the soil health. We are bound to improve the water holding capacity of the soil, reduce runoff, and so increase soil microorganisms and soil biota.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is important and very important to use these natural fertilizers, but it doesn't mean that the natural fertilizers are have zero effect on the environment.
Okay.
Because when we use natural fertilizers, maybe like the most popularly used animal dropping.
I was going to come to that. Like, okay, can you cite us some common examples of these organic fertilizers?
Yes. When we use organic fertilizer, the most commonly used, we have the animal dropping,
okay,
or animal waste. It may be from the poultry or from the piggery. When we use them, we know that this particular animals are being raised with hormones and even antibiotics. Okay. So there are possibilities that we may have contamination of antibiotics and hormones, especially when used excessively. And aside that, we may also, the fresh produce may also serve as a transmission for human pathogens when we consume this produce that is produced with the organic fertilizers that has maybe the antibiotics and some of those chemicals used to produce the animals.
Now, it is true you have highlighted some of the benefits of organic fertilizers, and you've also highlighted some possible side effects. My question is, if organic fertilizers are so beneficial, why do you think that farmers are reticent to adopt using organic fertilizer? Is it in terms of availability? What's wrong?
Okay, that is a very important and pertinent question. And the first thing is the farmers believe that the chemical fertilizers have an immediate effect on the yield or the growth of the crop. So as they apply within the shortest time possible, they see the crop growing very well, and so they see results and they are comfortable. But for organic fertilizers, they don't see that rapid response. And looking to it, that the farmers are not experts in the field, they don't know when to apply this organic fertilizer to expect the real result. For instance, they release chemicals gradually, which is good for crop because the crop needs continuous supply of bits of nutrients. So the organic fertilizers release these chemicals gradually, and then the crops can take. But when you apply, they need to first of all decompose before the crops can take the nutrients. So they don't know when to apply so that the crop will pick it at the right stage.
Okay.
And then they don't even know how to apply, because if you apply them wrongly too, you are going to have phytotoxicity, which means the chemicals may burn the plants, although they are organic. And so that is one of the problems. The next thing is that chemical fertilizers are everywhere. And these chemical fertilizers seem cheap to them. And I may also be tempted to say that the government is promoting the use of these chemical fertilizers, because in all their programs that I've seen, they keep distributing fertilizers to farmers. Right. Why not instead go and encourage the production of organic sources? If you go to our market, we have organic waste everywhere.
Okay.
It is a problem for Izakam to even dispose of that waste. So it means
the problem is not availability.
It is available, but the farmer don't even know
how to. Okay.
They don't know how to use this particular product.
This is where policymakers need to step in.
That is where they need to come in and then put in place the necessary resources to enable even the researchers' work. There is a project that we came up with. I personally wrote it down. That particular project was to produce voucher. Okay. And voucher is from organic sources. So the project was just to enable me go to the market, get all the waste that Izakam is trying to dispose of. Okay. I will, in that method, help them get this waste, and we get the burner. Okay. So we can heat it at very high temperature of about 150 degrees Celsius in the absence of oxygen. And then we get the charcoal. Now, this charcoal is what we call voucher. It will help to improve our yields, and then not just improve our yield, it will sequester carbon. We are reducing the carbon in the atmosphere.
That's fighting climate change.
And reducing greenhouse gases.
Sure, we are going to have time to talk about this particular project. It's very interesting. We are going to have time to talk about it, but we are wrapping up with this interview, and I would just like to find out from you, because you are equally the head of department of an agricultural institute. Why an agricultural institute?
Okay, first of all, I received a training as an agricultural expert, and when I look at my community, and you too can bear with me, you see graduates moving everywhere with certificates. It is a mistake for people to study agriculture, for young Cameroonian youth to study agriculture, and they are moving with certificates looking for a job, which means there is a problem. And when I interacted with some of them, I realized that one thing is lacking, and that thing is the practical skills. Okay. So the students have all the theoretical aspects. Of course, we can see these theoretical aspects in all the libraries, in textbooks. So why lay all the emphasis in these theoretical aspects with zero skills? So the skills are those that are needed at this particular moment. We need the skills so that we can establish ourselves. And that is why in St. Louis, we focus more emphasis on the practical aspects, give it 70%, okay, so that within just 2 years of the training, these particular students are able to have a mastery as technicians in general agriculture, be it aquaculture, fish production, and constructing everything for themselves using every available waste material. We don't need to buy. We are in a developing country, so the resources are available. Okay. And that is what makes the training even more effective and encourages me to continue with such a training.
Mr. Tani, it was such a pleasure having you on this segment of the program Planet Rise on Canal International. Once more, thank you for accepting our invitation.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
And thanks very much for watching. Goodbye and God bless.